Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome. My name's Alex Hilton. I'm the Chief Exec of the Cloud Industry Forum. We're a trade body representing a large amount of the IT community and indeed cloud providers, and working with many end users as well, trying to help them understand the cloud and demystify some of the stories that are out there. Quick show of hands, if I may, just to make sure you're awake firstly. Who regards themselves as a cloud supplier, selling cloud services of some form? Thank you. Who regards themselves as a, if you like, a consumer or a customer, whatever the language is you choose to use? So about 50-50 in there. Okay, who believes they are in the wrong show and should be at the cleaning show next door? One of you. Okay, well, you look immaculately clean, sir. Okay, right, without further ado, I'll introduce the panel in a second. I've just got a couple of things I'm going to show you. We have a vacant seat. Unfortunately, we didn't find Nigel from Commvault, so if he appears, we'll sit him down. Otherwise, I'll take the seat as well. I'll introduce, or let the panel introduce themselves in a second. This is obviously a Navisite sponsored session, so we'll lead off with Sean there in a moment. But the subject we're talking about here is multi-cloud. Now, with that in mind, I want to give you a really quick, and it will be brief because a lot of numbers on this slide, really brief introduction in terms of some of the things that we can perhaps use for the course of the conversation. One of the things that the Cloud Industry Forum does, my organization representing our members, is produce research papers. And these research papers look at what's happening in the UK. We just launched this one yesterday, in fact, so it's hot off the press. You can get hold of it from our website, Cloud Industry Forum. But within that research, we look at cloud adoption, we look at trends, we look at barriers and problems that customers face, real end users face, okay? So I wanted to give you a couple of highlights in here. You can see there's a high-level set of numbers. I'm not going to go through all of these, don't worry, because I'm trying to frame the conversation we're about to have. 88% of companies in the UK are using cloud services to one degree or another. 67% will be increasing cloud deployments they're regarded as strategic. So let's make an assumption here that cloud is now mainstream on the IT agenda and from a strategic perspective. 60% of businesses, to the point of multi-cloud, are using 2 or more cloud services. So that is now the prevalent way that people are consuming cloud is not just putting the toe in the water and using one to test. It's moved beyond there, and there's a level of maturity that is achieved. How 54% foresee that they will, at some stage in the future, go entirely cloud-based. So clearly that's going to have a multitude of different cloud services. That said, the foreseeable future is very much this hybrid cloud, mixed cloud environment that we're familiar with. Those are kind of the positives around it. There's some challenges that people face, which is this bottom set of numbers in here. 90% of companies experience migration challenges using cloud services. And on average, in fact, the cloud deployment cycle was about 15 months. Okay, so often longer than people anticipated or expected. 62% are concerned about data privacy. The whole security story comes up here. We're going to touch on that one. Legacy is a challenge, integration of legacy. Lack of budget, we kind of understand that one, I'm sure. Digital transformation, this is a theme that's been talked about a lot. Is it marketing hype? Well, 40% of organizations regard it as disruptive, but about 44%, doesn't say that on this slide, are actually going through some kind of transformation program. The downside to that, or the challenge within that, is that 17%, only 17%, are confident that their leadership can transform the business. So there is a distinct lack of confidence in the IT leadership community, not just IT leadership, but in the community in terms of the things they can do. Okay, that was all I wanted to do to frame the conversation. What I'm actually going to do is go back to the slide before to leave the names of everybody up there, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Sean, we're going to start with you. Ollie, Richard, and Jay from there. Sean, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, Sean McCavan. I'm the Managing Director of Navisite in the UK, and we are a provider of managed multi-cloud solutions.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, my name is Ollie Pinson-Roxburgh. I am the Technical Director for Logic. Our company is all about securing the cloud, so helping organizations secure the cloud.
Can you hear Richard? No, we can't hear Richard either.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now? Switched on yet?
No, we have a... This man's going to come down and repeat the things that you say.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Okay, Jay, do you want to just tell us who you are?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jay Workman with VMware. I'm responsible for our marketing for our vCloud Air Network ecosystem, and that's about 4,400 partners globally who sell and provide cloud services leveraging VMware technology, and Navisite's an example of one of our premier partners in that ecosystem.
Can you hear Jay okay? Yeah, no? We've got a bit of sound trouble here, guys. You could hear him. Okay, we've got a mixed view. We've got a hybrid answer. I think most got it, Jay. Richard, sorry.
So testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is one working? Yeah. So I'm Richard. I'm Richard Tooth from Microsoft. I'm a business development director in our cloud solution provider program.
Thank you. Okay, I couldn't hear him terribly well, so I'm hoping the sound is traveling well enough to you on the microphones, on the speakers over there. Okay, so let's start off. Sean, first question. We're talking about multi-cloud. Can you give us a little bit of definition in terms of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, sure. So I think the accepted definition is that it is a platform made of a combination of two or more cloud platforms combined into a heterogeneous architecture. So if, like me, you had to Google heterogeneous, it means made up of disparate parts. And I think that's the interesting part, because it can deliver many benefits, but the combination of the disparate parts makes it complex.
So that could be a private cloud.
It could be a private cloud, public cloud, SaaS platform. It's not necessarily the same as hybrid, which could be a combination of cloud platforms and more traditional IT delivery mechanisms.
Okay, all right, cool, thanks. Ollie, I know you're kind of passionate talking about this in terms of just getting the positioning of this whole multi-cloud story right. Is it hype? Is it reality? What's your take on experience with speaking with clients and customers?
Yeah, I guess in the early days we were seeing organisations kind of saying that they had aspirations to move to a multi-cloud strategy, and there wasn't really much going on. So there was a few kind of dipping the toe in the water a little bit, but now certainly in our conversation we were having just earlier, we're certainly seeing a lot more organisations kind of adopting this multi-cloud strategy, and some of that's due to just organic, right? They've realised that, okay, they can't use this cloud provider for this, or somebody else has decided to take their journey slightly differently than what the business had decided. So we're certainly now seeing a lot more organisations taking that approach to choosing not just one cloud, but going down a multi-cloud strategy.
Okay, Richard, your experience talking to clients?
Well, I'm working with service providers in the industry, and I would say this is probably one of the most common topics that's coming up. They're being asked by their customers, can you help us with the intrigues and complexities of managing more than one cloud? And they're asking us for guidance as to the kind of services and solutions that they could offer. So I'd say it's definitely happening, and those numbers that you produced, Alex, certainly endorse my experience.
Okay.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's very much the reality. I think it is the new normal that we're living with today, and we see it really driven by the enterprise. So customers moving more and more workloads to the cloud. They're not homogeneous workloads, so they require different OSs, different levels of expertise, different levels of security and uptime, and it's difficult to find a single provider that's able to cover that for multiple applications in an enterprise. So they're taking a multi-cloud approach, and I think it's reality today. We're all seeing.
Okay, cool, thanks. Richard, just back with you for a second. The concepts of kind of managing this multi-cloud environment. It's good to have Microsoft and VMware sitting next to each other. That's lovely, you're all friends. Do you think that's a challenge for clients, this whole management issue around this one?
It's definitely something that needs to be thought about very carefully. As you implement multiple clouds, the danger is multiple silos, in effect, with multiple management systems and solutions and technology and so on, and increasing your clouds just increases the complexity of everything. So I think management needs to be thought about carefully. I think there's going to be a strong focus towards tools and platforms that can help you deal with management across multiple platforms and multiple clouds, single pane of glass, similar to the kind of services that we deliver through Azure. I think also moving up the stack from infrastructure to platform and software as a service also are ways of reducing the complexity of management. We'll see a strong trend for that over the coming years.
It increases procedural and compliance challenges as well, right? Because you can't, it becomes more difficult to apply the same level of policy across multiple cloud platforms. So, one environment might have some feature that you can utilize for the benefits of your security in your cloud and for compliance and for policy. and the other environment may not support the same approach. So getting a good understanding of what coverage you have and planning that in advance ensures that you have the ability to really go with your eyes wide open as to how you would deal with those the multi-cloud strategy and making sure you can give good coverage for that.
Do you think, Ollie, just staying with you for a sec, I know you're more technical than certainly I am. Without going too deep on the techie front, do you think there are a big set of technical hurdles that people have to overcome in terms of moving from, if you like, that legacy on-premise world, or indeed the single cloud world, to this multi-cloud?
Yeah, in my side, there's definitely technical hurdles because traditional technologies and tooling just aren't built for some of these concepts. They weren't designed for that in the very beginning, and certainly from a security standpoint, they're definitely not designed to deal with agility or even multiple platforms in a lot of cases in this way. So I would imagine that these guys will also attest to it, and you guys as well, really, that organizations really need to get a good grounding from partners and the vendors themselves to understand where the kind of pitfalls are and where the gaps really exist. But I would say there's definitely technical gaps between what's feasible in one cloud provider versus the other, as well as what you've probably traditionally been used to doing in on-premise environments.
Okay, I mean, Sean, I imagine you have some thoughts on this whole topic in terms of managing these environments. Where did Navisite come from this?
So I think in order to be able to manage anything, you need to be able to monitor and measure first, and so you need a set of tools that you can extend across the different platforms that make up your architecture. Then you need to pull that data into a single pane of glass that delivers useful information that again will let you make useful decisions on what to do and maybe help you make commercial decisions as well. And then you need to be able to manage it, and the different platforms, perhaps different hypervisors, mean that you need different skills to be able to do that on the people side as well.
Okay, cool. I mean, I encourage you, we haven't discussed this beforehand, but have you got any customer scenarios or examples or anything like that I think people would find use? By all means, throw those in at the course of the conversation. One of the areas we had talked about before was this whole concept of resilience of cloud services, and certainly as people become more reliant and cloud becomes more dominant in terms of adoption rates. What are you finding that this whole resilience story is all about? Is that, do people put too much emphasis on that? Because things fail, don't they? So does it matter, Sean?
I think things do fail. All IT platforms fail,
yep.
And for a long time we've built resilience in by using multiple providers. So in a WAN scenario, we'd use different carriers or different routes. We might have different data centers. The data centers might be owned by different companies. So we hedge our bets accordingly. So I don't think that extending that kind of logic into the cloud is a big step. It's more around the complexity.
So do you recommend people have a kind of a multitude of vendors out there, or are you better off going with one prime partner, prime organization who you're working with?
Well, I mean, obviously I have a personal axe to grind around choosing a managed services partner to handle that complexity for you. But I think it's about weighing up the business benefits versus the complexity, cost and risk. And I think that potentially a managed services partner can do that for you, because they can make the investments in tools and people to make that thing simpler.
Right, so it's kind of having, the definition I use, which is fairly unpleasant, is the single throat to choke.
Correct, yeah.
So you've got an organisation you can go to, they may then spread the load out beyond there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So Ollie, from your point of view, back to the whole resilience conversation, from a technology perspective, what challenges do you think people face and really should be considering in here?
Yeah, so from my side of things, I tend to get to talk to people when they are particularly concerned about the security aspects, and of course that's a big thing, is kind of outage, right? We've seen a lot of distributed denial of service attacks that have caused major outages for big businesses, and that costs money, so the longer they're out, the more it ends up costing them. So when I get to talk about those conversations with organizations, we talk very much about ensuring that they have the relevant security controls in place to reduce the risk of them having outages, but of course also pushing it out to the partners themselves, the cloud providers, making sure that they have the right security controls in place that can enable them to move the problem away from themselves and out of the cloud environments, out to maybe blocking closer to where the originating attack comes from, using CDNs and things like that. So there's definitely a big emphasis on resiliency. Of course, the IoT hack that we saw a while back, where it showed that a number of systems being compromised could really cause massive issues for businesses that were targeted by some of these compromises. So resiliency is definitely a a big benefit when you go to a multi-cloud strategy. You have the ability to scale on demand into multiple cloud environments if you do it right, and that's hugely beneficial from a security standpoint.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. So just Jay and Richard, just from a vendor perspective, if you like, just taking a slightly different tack, moving into the whole realm of security and the challenges that face. One of the stats that I'm not sure I pulled out enough anyway is in terms of biggest issues that people face. I talked about privacy on there, but let's broaden it and call it security. And really get an understanding of that. So this is a big issue for people, right? Jay, I don't know if you want to lead off on this one in terms of
absolutely. I mean, we frequently see security as the #1 issue that comes up in the different surveys, the reports that you all have done. And I think if you look at it like it's a three-legged stool, if you've got security, resiliency, and management, you really need to consider all three of those in your strategy, particularly as you move into the multi-cloud world. And I think one of the first things to consider from a security perspective is understanding the value of your data. What is it worth? Which types of data do you put the most value in? And that's going to help you develop the best security policy for those. And certain applications or certain data may reside with one vendor considering compliance requirements, latency requirements from a geo perspective, and sovereignty needs. So a lot of factors to consider, but easy to see why that's the #1 concern.
Okay. Richard?
So I would certainly endorse that in terms of a very, very significant concern and top of the agenda for most people. When you think that all applications for the future that are being developed now and will be delivered in the future, they're going to be mobile apps, they're going to be cloud apps, so security needs to be baked in at a number of layers. And from the Microsoft perspective, we think about it's really important to protect the asset of the identity, your directory. The identity is a kind of key part of everything. When you control and manage that, then you're in a position to control and manage devices, all the different types of tablets and phones and PCs and goodness knows what else that you're going to be distributing apps to. Also leads to controlling security at the application level, at the back end, and security at the infrastructure level. So you need to work with partners, tools like AlertLogic and so on, and partners like Navisite who can bring all of this wrapped together into an integrated security approach.
I'd say there's one other thing to note as well around the shared responsibility model. A lot of people don't have a good understanding of what they're responsible for and what their cloud provider is responsible for, and they can be different between different cloud providers. So just be clear on what is your obligation from a security standpoint and what is your cloud provider going to do for you, and make sure you've got clarity on that, because sometimes it gets missed.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. You may have noticed I'm now standing. Nigel is here. Hi, Nigel.
Hello. I'm very embarrassed to be late. My name's Nigel Tozer. I look after solutions marketing for Commvault and EMEA.
Cool. Thanks, Nigel. Do you want to answer the previous 5 questions?
I'd rather not take a view on that right now.
All right. So, Nigel, I know has been challenged in terms of time today, running around all over the place, so glad you're here. Nigel, obviously we're talking about multi-clouds, everything associated with that. From a Commvault perspective, we've talked about the resilience, we've talked about the manageability, we're talking about obviously security now. Do you want to jump in on any of this in terms of your thinking and the Commvault perspective in terms of the challenges of managing multi-cloud particularly?
We're very passionate about being infrastructure neutral. So for many organisations, they're struggling with this notion of having a hybrid model. And actually, one of the big challenges is there isn't one cloud that's suitable for everyone. So you might want to run some kind of services in one cloud vendor and some in another. And we believe having the portability to be able to move workloads from one cloud, one type of virtual platform to another should be something that you need to really consider about. One thing that we can't help with is this, they're quite often extraction charges and those kind of things, so you need to think very carefully. And it's one of the key areas that we believe is really important about the monitoring and understanding what's going on in the cloud so that you can take the appropriate action.
Cool, thanks. I don't know if we have a roving microphone. Does anybody have any questions in the audience that they want to address to people? There's somebody at the back there right by you.
Good afternoon, Alex. Yes, it's me. So the question mainly, I think Jay, you have a go at this one first. Clearly we're talking about multiple vendors, multiple services amongst cloud service providers, both application, infrastructure, platform, etc., etc. do you think the future lies mainly around ecosystems? And now everyone talks about SI models not really working. What does an ecosystem mean, and what's it going to be its primary challenges and benefits?
I'm not sure I caught the full question.
Jay? Sorry?
I don't think I caught the full question.
If I get the essence of it right, what Jez is talking about there is cloud really much more of kind of managing the ecosystem now, holistically? Is that what you're saying? Yeah? That's a thumbs up.
Well, I think the holy grail on this would be being able to manage from a single pane of glass multiple clouds, and I don't think we're quite there yet. From an industry perspective, we're trying it. A lot of companies are trying it, but it's kind of a trade-off, I think, between if you're in multiple clouds, do you want a management system that can do a lot of things pretty good, or do you want multiple systems that really nail it and do everything that you need? And we're probably more towards the latter today, trying to move to the former, to where you can have a system that'll manage multiple clouds, but the technology is changing so fast and the consumer needs are changing so fast that there's always going to be a little bit of a lag and a catch-up to doing that.
Okay, cool. I know, you know, sorry, we are having a few little sound troubles here. Can you hear us okay at the back still? Yeah? Okay, cool. I know, you know, one of the things that's been talked about is, and that question prompted it as well, the whole Gartner have this kind of attitude that they describe as bimodal IT, this kind of two streams, two speeds, so to speak, the legacy and cloud elements around it. I know there are certain quarters who favor arguments defined as multi-speed. So the reality is, you know, I describe it as kind of many lanes of the highway, so to speak, because actually there's more complex than just the two kind of lanes. So I think, you know, that with that challenge in mind and that concept, this kind of multi-speed certainly comes into play. Sean, back from your perspective, I just want to kind of delve into the management bit, because we haven't got a huge amount of time left. Just kind of going into the management area around this one. Because I'm not sure we quite got enough out of that one, because that for me actually is the key bit here in this multi-cloud environment. Managing this environment has got to be the most fundamental thing, because we've heard about this term shadow IT, okay, i.e. there's all this procurement going on elsewhere, and that is in our research proven to be the case. Should people be embracing that, accepting it's just happening and having to live with it? But how do you manage it? It comes back to that.
Well, I think if we look at how we all got to multi-cloud right now, we probably got here organically in a nice way, or by accident is another way to look at it, which would be, I guess, initially SaaS deployments, where the ingress with your organization is in your organization. So a traditional SI, to Jez's point, can manage and integrate that. Then you have people using applications the way they use them at home. So they swipe a credit card and now they've got a new business app. And I think that people will continue to do that unless we offer them solutions in an integrated and managed way that fulfill those same functions. So it's a mix of responsibility between the IT department and the service provider to enable the IT department by giving them tools to manage these heterogeneous platforms, but the IT department to ensure that they listen to their stakeholders and deliver what the stakeholders need.
Okay, so Richard, I'll just move over to you on this one. Okay, kind of moving away from the technology element around it, key as it is clearly, there are serious cultural issues that organizations face, right, in terms of making this change to this, you know, multi-cloud environment. Do you agree with that statement? Do you think there are cultural challenges within organizations to make the change, or actually is it more fundamental in terms of let's just deploy the technology and let everybody get on with it?
I'm not sure I see a connection between multi-cloud and cultural change, but I do see a connection between multi-cloud and a change in the way of managing IT, which is fundamental. And one of the factors that plays for me in the marketplace is a huge growth in managed services and companies providing managed services associated with cloud. So I think a recent statistic I saw, something like 50% of companies who purchase cloud capacity are now also purchasing third-party services to go with that. And some companies are spending almost 50% of their total cloud spend on services associated with helping them plan the journey to the cloud, executing the transition, and providing and operating a transparent and highly available infrastructure thereafter. So I think the industry is going through a huge transformation, and the cultural change is very much if you like, within the partner and the service provider community and the expectations of the customers that are hiring them to help them with their cloud journeys.
So we talk about, there's a question at the back which I'm going to come to in a sec. We talk about digital transformation. There was a bit I put up there. Nigel and then maybe Jay as the marketeers in here. It's marketing hype, right? Is there some substance to it, this digital transformation theme?
Yes, there is. I've 20 odd years in the technology industry, and everything's been incremental changes. Speeds and feeds, data gets a bit bigger, technology gets a bit faster. Now, it was really kicked off by virtualization initially, and the advent of mobile and all these different technologies, you can't do things slowly anymore. And it's overused examples of companies that disrupt traditional businesses. That's going to happen more. We see more and more evidence of it. So I think it might be a buzzword and it might get rebadged at some point, but there is a transformational time happening now where IT and what we can do for our businesses is changing faster than it ever has.
Cool. Okay, Jay?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think digital transformation is real. Whether or not you call that specific term a buzzword is up for debate, but what's behind it is very real. And I'll add on to what Richard said earlier. Part of it's mobility, part of it's cloud, but it's a new way of doing business to really not just thrive in the future, but for many companies to survive. It's adapting to the new models and going back to that three-legged stool of security, of resiliency, and of management, ensuring you've got a strategy in place to address all of those as you adopt and embrace multi-cloud. So absolutely real.
Yeah, great, thanks. Okay, we had a question at the back. Yes, sir.
Hello, hi. Here's a question for Oliver. Oliver, I know you, but you don't know me. How far has security come up? Technology improved as far as security is concerned in the public cloud and even in all the cloud?
So the question was, how far has security come in the public cloud?
Yeah, okay. It has improved, really.
Has improved in public cloud.
Right, yes. Okay. So I think certainly from a third-party vendor support perspective, we've definitely seen some great enhancements to the abilities of supporting the cloud infrastructure. There's been a lot of, hey, we can throw our stuff into the cloud, but that doesn't really help you to secure the cloud necessarily. It's more about kind of providing security services into the cloud. So the evolution really from a security standpoint is around integration with the cloud and the ability to actually evolve within the cloud itself and go along that journey. For me, being in the security industry for over 15 years, that's what's exciting for me about going to the cloud, is that from a security side of things, we can now be much faster, we can be more agile, we should be able to resolve issues faster, we can do things like Phoenix upgrades. It means that we can upgrade systems without any downtime. We should be able to deal with scale when needed for distribution, when there's a distributed denial of service attack. So for me, that's the most exciting thing in the security area, is that evolution to support the cloud and natively support it, not just say we can throw something on the platform. And there are a few really good players in the space that are able to do that. So I definitely think there's evolution happening as we speak. There's a lot of vendors that are now natively integrating with technologies to do that. Even integration with the core functionality of the cloud platforms to provide firewalling and things like that natively across the platform. So yeah, I think there's a lot of evolution in this space from a security standpoint, and it's very exciting.
Thank you very much.
Nigel, did you want to say something?
No, I was just about to say, having worked in this industry for a while, as I mentioned, the last 5 years, the most risk-averse individuals I've come across are bankers, and they're starting to talk to us about cloud technologies now. So as soon as bankers start to think about cloud and new services, then you can be sure that that concern about cloud is starting to wane.
Anybody from the financial sector here? Few of you? Okay, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you a question. But I mean, with that, do you find in the financial services sector, though, that is responding to this whole fintech disruptive nature, i.e. the bigger financial institutions have got to respond to what's happening in the market? So this disruptive nature of cloud is forcing them down that route.
Yeah, it is absolutely the case.
Okay. Are there any other market sectors, generally addressing the whole panel, are there any other market sectors you think are really moving ahead with their cloud adoption and this kind of multi-cloud environments?
It really depends on which country you're talking about. We've seen a lot in public sector. There's a cloud-first initiative that many countries are adopting and embracing, so I would say that's one. Healthcare is another one. seems to be adopting and embracing it at a bit faster pace.
In the UK?
No, I'm speaking more of holistically, globally, and to some degree the US for healthcare. Maybe Australia, for instance, has a cloud first initiative with their government.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really varies by country, I think.
And certainly in the UK government, maybe representatives here, there is very much a cloud first approach that's being taken. Sean, I know that you wanted to make a comment there.
Yeah, so I guess the fastest adopters we see are software companies and ISVs, where they might use platform as a service for development. They then might use a managed or a private cloud platform to deliver applications, and then they might use multi-cloud platforms to reach customers in geographies where they find difficult to reach right now. And so because revenue's driving them and the desire to achieve revenue growth, they're moving ahead very quickly.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the technology industry per se are the ones who are really moving forward, which I guess to a degree you would expect, because they're going to be comprehending the message more than others, arguably.
Yeah.
Do you think on the other side of it, to Nigel's point, with financial services, are there organisations that are slower to move? And is it everything cloud? Ultimately, let's go with that point. Is it everything cloud, come what may, or actually are there certain things that we just go, no?
So I think we see financial services moving slower as well. We have a bunch of customers in that sector, and they are moving slower. Right now, they're starting to move, I think, non-critical workloads onto cloud platforms. We have a client as a hedge fund who said recently they expected their last data center contract will be the last real estate contract they've ever signed. So maybe in 5 years' time they see themselves not owning infrastructure or data center real estate.
So Ollie, it's about attitude to risk?
Yeah, I definitely think that organizations now should be looking at risk. I mean, especially with the GDPR stuff that's come up. Yeah, I dared say GDPR. I know everyone's probably been bored to death by it already. But from the GDPR side of things, of course, understanding the risk and knowing where your data resides is one of those big critical components which I don't think people have got a good handle on. So if you look at some of the example cases where people have been fined by the OCO, it was because the businesses just didn't know what they had and they didn't apply the right level of security to the systems that they had. So understanding where your data is, knowing who's responsible for what. There is now that shared responsibility around data as well. DPA was more about just the individual being done for essentially the loss of data, but now it's that shared responsibility model. So again, cloud providers, hosting providers, organizations will now be more responsible, potentially be responsible for that data. So risk is really key.
I know there are sessions on GDPR, and it is quite a dry topic, but it is super important. It's certainly the biggest issue that we tend to see in the market. Just as one little anecdote on that one, I'm sure you guys will have heard this. I picked this up the other day. Talk, they had a data breach last year, were fined £400,000 by the Information Commissioner's Office. Under the rules of GDPR, which come into force in May next year, they could have been fined up to £70 million. Okay, so don't ignore GDPR. It's kind of an important one, in terms of things that are going on there. Any other questions from within the audience? The gentleman here at the front. Anybody else other than that? And there's one here, then on the left. So let's just go to the front here, right there. Come by. Sorry, not quite front.
Hello. Hi there. It's a question for the panel. Someone mentioned about the client services to be compatible and move easily. Now, what's your opinion about the pivotal cloud? Do you think that could be an enterprise-grade cloud where most of the services can be transformed slowly? How mature it is according to you?
So let me just make sure I understood you correctly. So the question is about public cloud.
It's about the pivotal cloud.
About the private cloud.
Pivotal cloud.
Sorry,
the PCF, Pivotal Cloud Foundry.
Oh, the Cloud Foundry?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So I'm just wondering if an enterprise-grade cloud is something which is aimed. Is it something enterprise organizations can look that they transfer their services onto it slowly to reduce the amount of cloud, mist into a common consolidated cloud stack?
Right, I'm not sure I fully get that. Are you guys picking up on that in terms of understanding the Cloud Foundry element around it in terms of enterprise readiness?
So, so most of the very big financial sector now is looking into the Pivotal Cloud Foundry as one of the key cloud frameworks, and they are trying to do some major setups with them. Now, what I am not sure is that how versatile services which any sector uses can be easily transferred into that kind of a stack. And if you have any opinion, this is very upcoming trend which is being debated, still not a real story. So I'm not sure whether you have any opinion about that segment.
Okay, that's getting quite detailed in it. I'll open up. Does anybody have any comments or views they want to make on that? I don't think they do. So I think you've drawn a bit of a blank on us there. So thank you for that.
No worries.
Let's pick that up offline, maybe is appropriate. There was somebody here on the left, on my left. Thank you. Fourth row.
Yeah, hi there. It's a bit shorter. So in terms of supply and demand of cloud and then demand from business areas that have been spoken about in this presentation, there's obviously a delta there, and how are these guys on the stage addressing that? And also in terms of the solutions that they're providing, are they providing solutions for problems that they know and understand, or are they providing solutions that they think are going to be used by businesses but maybe necessarily aren't the right fit from day one?
So the bespoke nature of cloud, so to speak, yes? Okay. So are customers buying, if I understand you correctly, kind of off-the-shelf cloud services, or is there a lot of bespoke work that's having to go on there? Is that kind of a way of summarising that?
So the way I look at it, and it's been mentioned here, is about transformation
Yes.
of businesses in terms of culture and processes, and what would be considered legacy. That's where the business, a lot of problems is in terms of actually making that move from those into cloud, and there seems to be a lot of enablement in terms of hyper-conversion, etc., to make that move and transition from on-prem to cloud and between clouds easy, but that's just moving a problem.
Yeah.
What are the guys on the stage doing to actually help transform that as part of that process?
Okay, so let's go with that theme in terms of, so the principle around this one is as customers move from old legacy environments to cloud-based environments, what are you doing to help them through that process and kind of challenges they face? It's quite a big question. I'm not sure how much time we'll have for that one.
So what you mean is lift and shift versus cloud native. So rather than taking an application and building it for the cloud, making it cloud native, you're just kind of taking an application, just moving it into the cloud as data center. Is that right?
That's going to be my interpretation of that. Yeah, I'm not sure that's entirely what you're going, but we're tight on time now. So
I think there's two things. I think there's the lift and shift in legacy, but then I also think there's you build new shiny stuff in the cloud, but don't necessarily address what's in the cloud.
Right. Okay. So not necessarily all cloud is addressing what the client wants. It is kind of, I think, a bit of this bespoke nature of it, moving this legacy element forward, saying, well, is it kind of generic enough, or is it there's a lot of bespoke work going on there? We are tight on time, so let Ollie just touch on that one, and then maybe Sean to round up.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, if we're looking at the cloud native approach, I think to counter the problem generally is that organizations are tending to focus on doing lift and shift as opposed to building cloud native solutions. And they're kind of getting there, but the immediate is we need to put something in the cloud, so just go throw it in there as it is, rather than trying to build it for the needs that they have. That has a big impact on a lot of different things. Really benefiting from the cloud is the major thing, right? You're just moving a data center. You're not actually benefiting from the cloud itself. But to the point, if the cloud is not providing what you need, then that's your only option. The only option is to move to the cloud as a lift and shift. And then there isn't a great deal of benefit, in my opinion. And a lot of organizations have assumed they're going to save money and all these sorts of things with moving to the cloud. The reality is it don't necessarily always happen that way. So maybe there is some concerns and misconceptions that are made because they're not building it for that need.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the whole concept that there's no one size fits all is the argument for multi-cloud, really. So, there are lots of different reasons to adopt private cloud, to adopt Azure, to look at VMware, to look at Google, to look at Amazon, and many technologies in and around those platforms. So I think that if you are doing this for the first time, then getting help, and getting help that's vendor agnostic is the key thing to do there. And just pick the best platforms for the best workloads, and then pick the right tools to integrate those platforms.
Perfect roundup. Thank you very much, Sean. Okay, I think we are out of time now. My clock here certainly says we are. So please show appreciation for the panel, and thank you for your time.